So we've got a treat tonight. Friends of mine, Chris and Tim Vanderhook, they acquired MySpace, and they are undertaking what I think is a phenomenal entrepreneurial endeavor of trying to turn around an iconic brand that has had issues in the past. And I thought we'd bring them out right now, and we could all talk about turning around a brand and how the internet's evolving. So, Chris and Tim, if you would come join us.
They're giving us free stock too, aren't they? If we help them a little bit or something.
So,
you sit there, we'll put you in the middle.
I'm not sure if I should start with which one of you guys, but I'll direct it to either one. Tell us the story about how you guys decided to take on MySpace as your project.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm Tim. This is Chris, just so everybody knows. So we owned a big advertising business. It was called Specific Media, and a lot of the banner ads that you see online, a huge chunk of those were coming through the company that we owned. And what we saw were brand marketers were really trying to attach themselves to content in a very unique way. And as we watched what MySpace had at its core, the big value proposition was a huge community of artists, specifically recording artists, that used the platform, and it was a time where consumer sentiment had hit a rock bottom for MySpace, but there was a lot of positive sentiment amongst the artist community. And so when we saw Rupert Murdoch had put it up for sale, we got the book, we looked at it, we threw it in the trash because it was so bad. I went into Chris and I told him, there's no way we can acquire it. It's that bad. And so then we pulled it back out and we started flipping through it on what we could do. And ultimately what we recognized was if you positioned it as the home for artists, which none of these guys really have a home on the web today. They use Facebook, they use Twitter, they use YouTube, they use all of these destinations, yet no place, no single destination that they could call home. And when we acquired MySpace, that's really what the big idea was to go after an incredibly influential group that has their own audience that could make MySpace their home and bring that audience back.
So if I can ask, I don't know if it's public, how much did Rupert pay for the asset, and then how much did you guys pay for it?
Rupert, I believe, paid
$585 million.
$585 million. I think it became public later. They invested about $2 billion into it. It had lost $250 million the year before we bought it in cash. So that's why we were. That's why we were so excited.
This isn't public, but we'll just say it. When we were looking at the.
Now we're talking.
When we were looking at it and going through the negotiation, in the month prior to us acquiring it, that asset burned $22 million in cash. And it was at such a rapid pace. Now you can understand why I threw the book in the trash. It was such a rapid amount of cash that it was burning.
And two things. First of all, so your vision is to make it a home for artists. Talk, if you would, and I want to ask Bob the same question. How do you guys look at this issue evolving of artists' rights to their music and artists being able to monetize people listening to their music? Because on Pandora and others, it's just not there. So I want to hear from you guys and from Bob.
It depends on really who you're talking about. I think that there are emerging artists today who are not necessarily interested at this stage to monetize their music per se right now. They're looking at building fan base, getting their listenership up, being discovered. I think that MySpace has always served a huge purpose in that for so many artists. I would easily say that 60+% of the people on the radio today have a huge MySpace story, that was either how they were discovered or they built their first fan base or they signed a record deal off of that. And so that's really the purpose that MySpace always served in that. But I think it really varies across the board. I think if you look in, kind of the EDM scene right now, electronic dance music, a lot of those artists hold that, look, my music is essentially free. I give it away on things like SoundCloud, and my business is live shows, and they make a lot of money doing that.
And Bob, you're at the center of many different intersections here around artists' rights and artists be able to make the kind of living they used to make from their music. How do you look at the issue?
Well, they used to not make money on concerts. That was the loss leader to sell records. Now they make their money from concerts, and the music is the loss leader to make money on concerts. And actually, most of them, as you look at a successful career, make more money today than they did. And I think it's the balance. And if you look at the artist sort of how do they do. The music industry is interesting because it's really, if you want to get to the root of it, it's packaged goods. But they don't spend any money on advertising. You look at P&G, you look at Coca-Cola, Pepsi, everybody spends this huge amount on advertising. Well, they do spend money on advertising. They spend probably a third to half of the expense of a record company is radio promotion. They spend money to get free advertising. Katy Perry, how did she go from unknown to a household word in a year?
How?
She got $1 billion of free advertising on the radio. Again, if you put $1 billion behind anything, people will know it, and that's what happens.
There's a theme here.
Yes. And so what we find is that, with broadcast radio on one spectrum, this is where people discover music. 70% of people, the main way they discover new music is broadcast radio. If you ask Pandora users, about 70% say broadcast radio. If you ask Spotify users, about 70% say broadcast radio. In the spectrum, and people get confused, I think, about audio streams, but we have two things in our lives. We have a music collection, and we have our own personal collection, and radio. The personal collection is when you want to escape the world. I want to curate it for this moment. When I was a kid, like late 60s, my parents would yell at me, I'd get upset, I'd go in my room, I turned on the Doors. I was lying on the bed, turned out the lights, and I had Jim Morrison playing. That was the mood I wanted at that moment. I didn't want a disc jockey, I didn't want weather, I didn't want information, I didn't want commercials. And today, the same thing. I come home after work, tough day at work, turn on the music, I just zone out. That's my music collection. Radio is the opposite, the mirror image. It's when I want to find out what's going on in the world. I get in my car, turn on the radio, what's happening? I expect them to tell me every bit of gossip, every bit of stuff about new music. I want to hear the weather, I want to hear the traffic going the way to work. I want to hear some people talking. Even the advertisements tell me what's on TV tonight, what movies are out, what new cars are going on, Six Flags open, what's the new ride they have. It's pieces of information.
Right.
So I think from an artist's perspective, they use one place as promotion and they sell it over here. Today they use this as promotion. They not only sell music, they have merchandising sales, they sell a lot of concerts, live music. When you get to EDM, it's all about the door. If you look at some of our radio announcers on stations that play where the DJs are real club DJs, they're not interested in really how much money they make from the radio station because it's promotion for them to go make a lot of money in the clubs.
And how do you guys think MySpace will find that next big revenue source? Is it from the small independent artists who use this as a place of discovery, or are there other ideas?
Well, it certainly isn't from small independent artists, because if you ask an artist, he pulls out his pockets and says, I don't have any money, you can't get it from me. So
right.
For us, it really isn't that. A big part of it is going to be advertising based. Our core business is that of an advertising business. The music being uploaded is content, and that is a media company right there. So the advertising is definitely going to be a huge revenue driver. But really, MySpace for us, what we're not looking to do is reinvent the old social network. We are not trying to roll back the clock 10 years. MySpace was really a vessel for us that, yes, we saw the initial piece that it was this platform for artists, but really it's a vessel for us to drop new innovation in. And it is going to be around artists. They are huge content creators,
right.
And we are excited to be able to launch new things within that.
How's Justin Timberlake?
Can I just add one thing? I think the one thing you also, when we talk about artists, that all of us have a responsibility to do is to constantly be finding new artists and make them successful. That we are, some people say, well, that's their problem, how much money they make. It's actually our problem, because whereas the music industry uses us for pre-promotion, we use them to find these artists, and it's a lot of work to find and develop the artist. So I think we have a true symbiotic relationship, and it's very important that we look out for the artist and make sure, at least in totality or wherever it's coming from, that they are making money and they're being rewarded for their creativity. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to do it.
And the symbiosis could also be said to be between MySpace and Clear Channel, because MySpace is a place for artists to find a home and get discovered, and then you're the next level. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's right.
Absolutely. If you ask every artist what they want to be is on the radio. I mean, that's true discovery. That's when you've actually hit it big time.
They don't say I want to be on Pandora. Is that true?
I think they just said radio.
Yeah, that's right.
It is 100% that, and I agree exactly what Bob was saying, is that the radio is how they are. So many of them are heard and discovered, and that sort of is their pinnacle, definitely of what they want. We're running a piece right now. We're highlighting a bunch of artists from our community. It's an ad campaign that we have going, but it's a 30-second spot on television and digital where we're just highlighting a new artist you've never heard of, and they're amazing. There's so many artists actually that you've never heard of that you're going to hear about. And they're going to be back, and they need a platform like MySpace that's going to help them do that so that they can get on the radio.
Well, by the way, and I think that's exactly what happens. I mean, we look here, we look on YouTube, we look at places. We're constantly looking for an artist because they can only go so far without the radio behind it. Part of it is that the consumer expects radio to curate stuff for them. They want to hear the disc jockey recommend it, tell them a little backstory, get them some understanding of who this artist is to take them to the next level. And by the way, if you look at Spotify, iTunes downloads, Pandora, playlist creation, it all correlates perfectly to radio airplay. The more broadcast radio plays something, the more it is. When the radio airplay begins to diminish, it does on the other places as well. So we tend to be the place that drives it up and down, and that tends to be the people who sort of get to it through the music collection. And by the way, Pandora and on iHeartRadio, our custom radio feature isn't really radio. What it is playlist creation.
Right.
I go back to convenience. Anybody who's made a playlist more than once goes, that's a lot of work. Put one song in, it spits something out, close enough. And that's what we do with iHeart. That's what Pandora does. And by the way, a wonderful feature.
So we got to wrap up soon, but the theme of tonight is next, about what's happening tomorrow, not just today. So I want to ask one representative from your team, and then also Bob. Well, let's start with Bob. The pattern recognition that you've had over your career.
Thank you for saying I'm old.
is impressive, even given how young you are. And so what do you see as a disruptive force around the corner that maybe we don't see right now?
No, it's less about a disruptive force and more about the trend. My entire career was built toward a connected home. Cube and Columbus, two-way TV. The Time and Warner merger was about the connected home and feeding the content into the connected home. The AOL Time Warner merger was about that. And as soon as we had mobility and didn't have a connection, the consumer left the home. It reversed. People aren't all going to work from home. We're not going to be Wall-E slurping that stuff on the spaceship somewhere. And it's fascinating to me because it's a trend I absolutely did not see coming. And because we thought they wanted to be in the home. They didn't want to be in the home, they just wanted to be connected.
Yeah.
They wanted all that. And so I think what you're seeing now is the unraveling of a whole history of where we were going. People saying, wait a minute, what does it mean that they're out of the home? For us in radio, or people in the mobile phone business, this is great news. I mean, we have outdoor and radio are our two biggest businesses at Clear Channel. We're the only company that loves traffic jams. And so I think as you see products being developed, it's being developed more for people who are connected individuals, but out of the home. Yeah. And I think that changes completely everybody's sort of startup ideas and dreams about how you use products.
Guys, what do you see around the corner?
I would say that there's going to be a huge influx of dollars into this digital ecosystem, and I think it's going to spark a huge amount of creativity amongst artists and creators of content. And I think what you're seeing is because of mobile devices now and connectivity, everyone is connected. There's a lot more data about consumers out there, about who they are that's listening to a certain show, whereas in traditional broadcast mediums, it wasn't there. And I think there's coming a tipping point where advertising dollars really do come in mass into the digital ecosystem, and it's going to spark thousands upon thousands of entrepreneurs, ideas, everything that's coming down the pipe. And I think artists will be one big beneficiary of that as advertisers look to partner with them in new and unique ways, because that's what they're always going after.
And the punchline to me is that, as always, change is inevitable. Chris and Tim Vanderhook, Bob Pittman, great to have you with us at Chicago Ideas Week.
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks.